clapped a white-gloved hand over Lou's mouth, but by then the rest of us had already spotted the brand-new Oldsmobile being carried away by the water. From behind me, I heard a man who could have only been Mr. Maynard yell something that certainly had never been uttered on those church steps before. Quick as a flash, Lou's mother's hands moved from Lou's mouth to her ears. Then someone else cried out. People began to point to an object floating toward us. As it drew closer, I saw it wasn't one object, but two, and then that they weren't objects at all, but two little girls. The Coombs twins, who had stayed home from church that morning on account of having the chicken pox, were floating side by side in the water, flailing and sputtering for breath. "They'll drown!" shouted Mrs. Updike as the twins neared. "Somebody do something!" There was a moment's pause when we all searched ourselves for the courage to jump in, each one of us finding instead an excuse not to. Then, from somewhere to my left, I heard a familiar voice, one that never failed to make me flinch. "My daddy can do it," Bruce Pittman crowed. "He's the best swimmer in town." And with that, all eyes turned from the twins to the Pittmans. Mr. Pittman stood behind Bruce. His face went sallow, his knuckles turning white on his son's shoulders. His features were pinched like he had just stepped in a steaming pile of horse manure. Mr. Pittman's eyes flickered to the bobbing heads in the swift, churning water. He licked his lips. "They're going under!" squealed Mrs. McGuire as the two tiny heads disappeared beneath the water. Mr. Pittman opened his mouth to say something, but we never found out what it was. An elbow jutted into my ribs as people were pushed aside. Then the flash of someone diving into the water. He was tall, but his shoulders narrow. A boy who wasn't quite yet a man. For a long moment, he didn't reappear, and I thought whoever the boy was, he might have drowned. "Who was that?" I heard Mama ask Daddy. "I think it's John Bailey's boy," Daddy replied. "Jack, isn't it?" The name began to ripple through the crowd. I only knew Jack Bailey from a distance then, as a boy 3 years ahead of me in school who wore the same ratty clothes every day. Behind us all, Pastor Douglas began to pray loudly. "Our Holy Father, maker of heaven and earth," but no one else joined in. We were too busy watching as Jack Bailey suddenly reappeared, hoisting an arm beneath the shoulders of each tiny twin. Then he began to swim toward a river birch that had been felled by the flood, and which was likely what had shaken the church, but whose roots still held fast. If he could get to the tree and lift the girls onto it, they would be able to shimmy along the trunk all the way to where its upper branches rested on dry land. At first, it looked like they weren't going to make it. The current wanted to sweep them forward, not allow them a sideways detour. But then Jack seemed to find some strength he must have been saving up and began to kick harder and harder, and the people on the steps began to shout, "You can do it, son! Little faster now, that's it!" Then he had reached the birch tree, which gave him enough protection from the current to lift the Coombs twins one at a time onto the trunk. The girls coughed up river water as Jack hoisted himself up after them. We watched as he gently pushed them to start scooting their way along the trunk toward dry land. By that time, a few men had run through the church's back door and along the hillside graveyard that still sat above the rising water where the top of the tree had landed. As soon as the twins were near enough, 2 of the men reached through the boughs to lift each of them off. Behind them, Jack jumped down. The moment they were all on dry land, everyone began to clap and cheer. Some of the women held their handkerchiefs to their noses or eyes, though the handkerchiefs must already have been soaked from the rain. Mr. Maynard looked close to tears, too, though I thought it was more likely he was misty-eyed over his car than out of relief for the twins.